Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I am your host, Jim Graham. On today's show, we're going to dive into some of the top headlines here in the world of mixed martial arts and also provide a brief preview for Bellator 138 this weekend. We will also recap UFC 188 from this past weekend in Mexico City, and we will pick the main card fights for UFC Fight Night Berlin, the first ever title fight shown exclusively on the UFC's streaming network, UFC Fight Pass, for the women's strawweight title, Joanna Jedrzejczyk against Jessica Penne. I am your host, Jim Graham, and joining me today is Billy Brandt. And as listeners know, Billy has filled in several times for Dave, and we have big news. If you saw on our Facebook page, it said we got big news for this week's show. Dave notified me prior to last week's show that he was looking to take a break. Not a set amount of time or anything, but he kind of mentioned that he has a new work schedule and he's been going to the gym a lot more, trying to get back in shape. And obviously, as he's mentioned several times in the show, he has twins. I think they're 6 years old now, maybe 6 or 7, somewhere around there. And he'd like to spend time with them for the summer. They're out of school, stuff like that. So I said, dude, take a break. If you want to come back, come back. If you don't want to come back, you're still involved with the show, just let me know. So I told Billy this information, and he said, "I will be your new co-host." That's what he said. I didn't even ask if he wanted to. I just said, "Hey, so Dave told me," he's like, "I'll be your new co-host." He demanded it, and here he is. He is the new official co-host of Beyond the Cage. And so, Billy, if you want to say any words to our 17 or so listeners here of Beyond the Cage.
Thanks for having me. Look forward to filling in, doing all these podcasts coming up. We got a lot of good fights booked.
All right, just in case you haven't followed Billy on Twitter already, it's at WBrant21. Just in case people haven't done already, so go and do that. Also, if you haven't noticed, we got a new show logo. I decided the old logo was decent. We used the website. Maybe some of you have used it, maybe you haven't. It's called Fiverr.com. And basically, the whole point of the website is you can get people to do stuff for you for just $5. That's why, hence Fiverr. Now, you can do extra services and whatnot and get more than one product. You may end up spending more than $5, but whatever their service is supposed to be $5. So I originally went on there and got the old logo, kind of the tan, red-black logo. It looked good, but I had to basically redo half the logo after the guy sent it to me. I did not have a good experience with this particular gentleman. I went to a different guy. Figure, all right, I'll try Fiverr one more time for $5, see if we can get a logo. And that's what he came up with, the new Beyond the Cage logo, which I think is pretty cool. I think he did a good job. It actually looks like he did work on the logo instead of the other guy, which I had to do most of the work. He should have paid me $5 for the last one, but that didn't work. So we got a new logo. And also I'm looking to get like a new, Facebook header, look professionally done. Same thing with YouTube and whatnot. So we can kind of get that cross platform kind of look. So that'll be coming here in the next couple of weeks. So trying to make changes here for the show moving forward. So let's get to some news. Let's start off with some kind of fun news. As fans know, I got to interview Sam Alvey a couple weeks ago, just after his win in Australia. Once again, that's when he knocked out Dan Kelly. And I kind of half jokingly mentioned, "Hey, Sam, I'm going to go down to the Nashville card for my birthday. Would you be able to have your next fight on the Nashville card for my birthday?" Now, some people, maybe they don't know me. I try to ask some fun questions. I was kind of half joking, half serious about him going out because I would like to see him fight in person. And Sam was like, "Yeah, I'll see what I can do." Well, Sam Alvey is a man of his word, ladies and gentlemen, whether I was joking or not. As of last night, on his Facebook page, he will be fighting Derek Brunson down in Nashville. So that is official. So it leads me to believe, Billy, that every time I have a fighter on, I should just demand they fight on certain cards because they would deliver for me. That's, I think, the precedent that Sam Alvey is setting here.
Yeah, he set the bar high, but I think we can start making fights happen.
And it's funny. I messaged him after I found this news out, and I said, "Dude, I was kind of joking. You didn't have to fight there." And he goes, "Oh, it's no big deal. I just told Jill Silva what you demanded, and that's what happened." I highly doubt my name came up in whatever way they book fights, which if I'm correctly, when we've had Brian Ebersol, I think we asked him, how he gets his fight information, whether it's a text or a phone call, and he was saying it was an email. Like Joe Silva sends him email, he says, "Hey, do you want this fight?" And you reply yes or no. So I'm assuming that's the situation that went down. I think unless it's something like a short notice or you're coming off an injury, I think that's about the only time you call Joe Silva and or Joe Silva calls you.
Yeah.
Is something that's not the norm. But if he's setting up cards and he's like, oh, maybe Sam can fight, and he has an ID in his head, I think he just emails you. So that's what I mean. I highly doubt my name somehow came in that conversation, but yeah. Anyways, pretty cool.
It worked nonetheless.
Also on that Nashville card, they just added Uncle Creepy against Dustin Ortiz, a matchup of two top 15 flyweights, the complete opposite of heavyweights. And I believe Dustin Ortiz has some ties to Tennessee. I think he's originally from the area, so that'll be kind of like a hometown favorite, in addition to obviously OSP main eventing the card.
Yeah, that's a good fight. I mean, I feel like a lot of people forget Uncle Creepy and how good he was in the fight he gave Johnson. I really look forward to him anytime, too.
So that card's pretty much like filled out. That's just completed in time for tickets going on sale today if you're a UFC Fight Club member. Tomorrow is the pre-sale for the newsletter, and then Friday is the general on sale public, August 8 in Nashville. As I said, I will be down there. Billy's still on the fence, so he's got to work some things out. He's going to try to join me, but at the very least, I will be down there in Nashville at Bridgestone Arena for the fight. So let's get to some more fight news here. Speaking of matchup announced, not only will it be the first UFC fight in Saskatchewan, yeah, say that 5 times fast. That's in Canada, for those of you who don't know. It will be a matchup of two, in my opinion, I think, according to our Beyond the Cage rankings, Billy, I think we have both these guys in the top 5, with the winner probably getting a title shot in the featherweight division. I'm talking about Max Holloway against Charles Oliveira has been announced for a UFC Fight Pass event August 23rd, Saskatchewan, Canada. Should be exciting. No other fights have been announced. I think tickets go on sale next week, I believe. Yeah, next week. So they're already pushing the sales for that one. So what do you think about the matchup? What do you think about the title implications it has to do for the featherweight division, Billy?
I really like the matchup. I think it's a great fight. And I do think the winner should get a title shot. I don't think it's going to happen, though. There's too much going on up there with McGregor, Aldo. I'm sorry. I just blanked out. But, yeah, there's too many people high up in the division. I think they had Oliveira at 7 in the UFC rankings. I don't really like their rankings, but I would have liked to see Holloway fight someone up more. I don't know who's not booked up there.
Mendez would have been the only one.
I think that was it. Or even I think Lamas was still ranked above him, even though he's coming off a loss.
Right, and I think Bermudez has a fight booked coming up here as well. So I think they picked the matchup because they're both guys in their mid-20s on a roll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either way, especially for Holloway, I think that kid has such a bright future. He's so young. He's been around for a while. He keeps getting better.
And also the contrast of styles, even though they're both long and lanky guys, two of the taller and bigger reach guys in this division, completely different styles. Max Holloway is a lot more punches and bunches guy, good footwork and good combinations. Where you have Charles Oliveira, who's kind of crazy stand up, with the power, and then a guy that you don't want anywhere on the ground, whether he's on top or he's on bottom, and a guy that you really don't want to get in scrambles with. Because he gets submissions that way too. So it's a great contrast to styles, and I think that's kind of why they booked it, and also kind of to give each guy a shot at the main event. Neither guy has really had that shot yet, and this is a good matchup, maybe a little more equal footing than maybe against someone like Mendez, who obviously would come in as probably a heavy favorite against either gentleman. So they kind of wanted to do that, and you're going to, and they're needed a main event for Saskatchewan, Canada, which is, kind of like the farm country of Canada. They probably weren't going to bring something super huge, like for a Fight Pass event. So this is a big enough fight that I think will draw interest for the fans there. And like you said, I think title implications, at least by the time this fight happens, McGregor Aldo will have happened. And by that time, we should know that Frankie Edgar probably fights the winner. So that should all be sorted by then.
because it's all so backed up, they'll probably book that Edgar Aldo fight way later. So they'll probably take one more fight, whoever wins it.
It kind of depends. They may earn the title shot, but whether or not they want to sit on it is up to the fighter.
That's true, but I don't know if the UFC will let one of them sit on that after that win when there's guys like Mendez up there that they can book with, or even Lamas, even though he's coming off a loss.
All right, let's get to some Bellator news. That's right, Bellator. If you forgot, they're still around. And they're holding their next event people are saying might be a train wreck. If people remember Bellator 131 last year, that was supposed to be, or was, Tito Ortiz against Stephan Bonner. Now they're kind of doing round 2 of this here, Billy, as we're going to see Ken Shamrock against Kimbo Slice, also known as Kevin Ferguson. And also on the card, Patricio Pitbull will be making his first defense of his featherweight title, taking on Daniel Weichel. Also, some other notable names on this card. You got Bobby Lashley's fighting on the card, 2 former Bellator champions in Daniel Strauss and Michael Chandler. You also have 2 former Ultimate Fighter contestants in Adam Sella and Justin Lawrence, who both, I believe, at least Lawrence will be making his Bellator debut. I think Sella fought one previous time in Bellator. I could be wrong on that, but overall, pretty solid card for the fans going to the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis, Missouri, come this weekend, June 19th. And let's get to the co-main event real quickly. Like I said, some notable names, but Patricio Pitbull had a very good performance against Pat Curran to win the title. And Daniel Weichel, he fought Pat Curran to kind of get this title shot. Had a good performance, but I think that fight was more Curran not showing up more so than Daniel Weichel really dominating Curran or really looking like a world beater or anything like that. Now, I think Weichel has a chance, but I think Pitbull has developed so good here in the last couple of fights that is really hard to pick against him.
Yeah, I don't want to ever say a fight's too one-sided. It's MMA. That's why we love it. But he's been looking very good.
And I think also the potential for that knockout. I think Weichel's not a real huge finish guy. I mean, Pitbull has 17 finishes of 23 victories. Looking at Weichel, 35 wins, a lot of submissions, 21 submissions, which is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. But only 5 knockouts and 5 decisions. Now, Patricio Pitbull, I believe, is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So I got to believe that he will be prepared for what Weichel will be throwing at him. But like I said, I think the difference will be kind of that knockout power that he possesses. And looking at Pitbull, he's actually never been submitted in his career, nor has he ever been finished in 25 fights. And he's fought some good guys in those 25 fights, and he's never been finished. So Weichel, better than I think he'll do better than most people think, but I still think Pitbull will win.
Yeah, I'm setting the bar pretty low. I don't want to, but I don't think anywhere Weichel takes it, he's really better than Pitbull. So I don't know what he's gonna do. I mean, I'm sure he's aware, but we'll see what he has to pull out.
All right, this main event, this is the train wreck part of the program that I think is what Bellator is hoping people tune in for. Kimbo Slice against Ken Shamrock, a fight that was supposed to take place many, many years ago as part of a Elite XC show. That's right. You may not even remember what Elite XC was, but believe it or not, it was the first organization to ever put a fight on broadcast national television in the United States. Yeah, who would have thunk that, right? So they had, I believe their first event had Kimbo Slice on it. He fought, I believe it was James Thompson, if I'm not mistaken.
I remember that fight. I don't remember if it was the first one, but I remember that.
I think that might have been it. I'll double check on that, but that was one of the fights they had. And then the next big one was him against Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock got hurt while preparing for this fight. Actually, no, his first fight ever was an Elite XC. He had 2 fights previous. He beat Bo Cantrell and then I believe he beat Tank Abbott. Those were his first 2 fights in Elite XC. And then he fought James Thompson, so that was his third, knocking him out in the 3rd round. And then his 4th fight was the supposed to be the Ken Shamrock fight that was originally scheduled for 2008 in October. Ken Shamrock got, I believe, a cut it was while kind of doing some light sparring, preparing for the fight, getting warmed up. They called up undercard fighter, the silverback Seth Petrozelli, to come in, and he knocks out Kimbo Slice in the 1st round, 14 seconds, which kind of basically ended Elite XC. That fight kind of crumbled. Their whole organization was kind of built up on the allure of Kimbo Slice, that and, you know, kind of losing money, and they ended up kind of getting bought out, the company owned and Pro Elite, by Strikeforce. So a lot of the fighters that were in Elite XC ended up moving over to Strikeforce, and Kimbo Slice then ended up going on the Ultimate Fighter. Ken Shamrock, I think he fought a couple more times, but effectively that was kind of his last real big hurrah in MMA. Now they're bringing him back. I mean, I guess I get the idea of unfinished business, Billy. I kind of get it. I kind of get why they're calling it. But at the same token, Ken Shamrock is now 51 years old. He has not fought an MMA fight since 2010, which was a loss in the 1st round. I don't know. Ken Shamrock's he's only fought 4 times since 2009. I don't know. I mean, is it intriguing? I guess, but I don't know. I just feel like Bellator is above this.
Yeah, the thing, I love and hate this fight, because at first I look at it and I say, you know what, if they want to fight, they still got it in them. Let them fight. They're fighting sort of equal territory where they're both older. It's not like they're getting thrown against some young dude to come out there and tear their head off. And I hate it because I don't think it should be as big as it is, and I do want to say Bellator is above it, but at the same time, I'm wrong, because a lot of people are talking about this fight, and a lot of people will watch it. Now, as far as the train wreck side goes, I don't know how they'll both look when they get in the cage. But I think they're doing their job, and a lot of people will watch this fight.
I think the only way it's a train wreck is if it goes past the 2nd round.
Yeah, that as far as their conditioning, I don't see it, like, unless they just threw drug testing aside. I don't.
That's what I mean. I just don't see either of these guys really lasting more than 5 minutes. Even if they can last more than 5 minutes, I just don't think it will. I just think both guys are just going to go out and try to finish this thing as quickly as possible. And I think that's where we're going to get. So I actually think in relation to Ortiz and Bonner, I think it actually could be a better fight just because of that fact. Now, one thing I would have liked, obviously we talked about Patricio Pitbull and Daniel Weichel. That should be the main event. That's the title fight. This Kimbo and Shamrock, that should be the fight to get over, to kind of push people to like the actual Bellator stars, not old washed up guys that are Bellator is bringing in. I think that's maybe the only slight disagreement I have with the fight. I mean, you could still bill it as Shamrock and Kimbo. I'm just saying have the title fight be the main event. You know, you can put them bigger on the poster if you want, do whatever you want that way, but the actual main event, the guys going last, should be for the gold.
Yeah, I hate to say it, though, but I feel like if they want to do that, they're sort of doing it right, because some people will tune in, watch Kimbo Shamrock, turn their TV off, do whatever. This kind of forces people to watch all the way up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can go either way. You're hoping that if it ends up being a good fight, you know, they watch the main event or so on and so forth. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if it ends up working for Bellator. And I guess the thing is, I guess if it does work, kind of like Ortiz and Bonner did, where they get huge ratings, ends up being, you know, the biggest, you know, cable card of the year, Bellator is going to do something like this again. They're going to bring some other dudes out of retirement to fight again. That's their thing. What was that?
They're predicting that they're going to break that record they set with Tito and Bonner.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of Tito fans.
Yeah, that's true, but there's a lot of Kimbo fans from a different world. And I mean Shamrock too. A lot of those old school guys that recognize the name.
Yeah. I think next here's a matchup for you. Heavyweight. They're gonna bring out Tank Abbott against Tim Sylvia out of retirement. That's their next main event for December. Let's book that, right?
Mine as well at this point. keep the train rolling.
Is Pedro Hizzo still around? Can we get him? Pedro Hizzo against Tim Sylvia?
Yeah.
Is he still around? I'm just naming off. Just name off an old, washed-up guy, and Bellator will have him as a main event.
Hey, if people watch, I can't really blame them. I'm gonna watch. I bought into it. Side note, off from this fight, I just want to say, I'm really looking forward to that Justin Lawrence fight. That kid is so exciting.
Yes, I'm really excited for Justin Lawrence. I liked him on the show, The Ultimate Fighter. He was actually on the same season as our good friend Darren Cruikshank. Really like him. He had a pretty good run in RFA. After leaving the UFC, he dropped down a weight class to the featherweight division. He did really good in RFA. I actually thought he was going to go to the UFC. I thought going RFA to the UFC. So I don't know what the contract situation was, or maybe, he's one of those guys that saw that maybe his sponsorship would go down or something, decided to go with Bellator. But I think that's a really under the radar signing by Bellator. I think he's a guy that can really make an impact for their division. And arguably their featherweight division is their best division. Like, he's getting added to an already great division. And I just think that, they're giving him kind of a one-off fight, so to speak, against a lower level guy. But I wouldn't be surprised after this win when we see him mixing up with guys, like a Weichel and a Pitbull and a Curran and a Strauss, somebody like that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The way his style is, he has so much potential to be a star.
All right, well, let's get to last weekend's UFC card, UFC 188 from Mexico City. 5 fights were shown on the main card. The first fight of the evening was in the women's strawweight division as Tisha Torres took on Angela Hill, member of Tough 20 castmates. They were originally on the same team, Team Melendez, but as people know, Tisha Torres midway through the contest switched over to Team Pettis. And looking at this matchup, Billy, not very exciting. It was another decision win for Tisha Torres. She keeps undefeated at 6-0 now with 6 decision victories. She did what she needed to do, get this fight to the ground, not allow, the bigger, maybe a little stronger, and obviously a little rangier, more powerful Angela Hill to really get off on her Muay Thai striking. Torres only landed 2 takedowns, one in the first and one in the second. That pretty much led her to control the majority of the round. She ended up outstriking Hill 86-66 overall. Takedowns, were obviously the game plan, but she really suffered, especially in that third round, going 0 for 6 as Hill knew she needed to keep the fight standing to have a chance to win, to go for a knockout. 2-12 overall was Torres, and Hill actually outstruck Torres 29-19. Probably could have gave Hill the third round. I believe one of the judges did. You could have. I actually would have scored it a 9-9. I didn't think really much went on that round, but either way, Torres completely won the first 2 rounds. Got another victory. It wasn't the most impressive, but I think it puts her one fight away from a title shot.
Yeah, it's not an impressive win, but any win in that division is impressive only because you're so few fights away from a title shot at any time. So she did what she had to do. As for Angela Hill, I don't know where they put her from here. She might get cut, to be honest. I mean, it's not a deep weight class, but you got in that weight class, you're always 1 or 2 fights away from a shot.
Yeah, I think because her first fight was so exciting, that being Angela Hill, I don't think she will get cut. And also, I think a lot of people had maybe below average performances because of the elevation. I know, again, they brought up a lot in the broadcast, but we're talking about 1.5 miles up. And that's even higher than Denver. That no matter whether you train in Denver or whether you sleep in one of those altitude tents, I think a lot of people had some problems with that.
Yeah, I don't like to make excuses or anything, but you can clearly tell watching this card the difference it made. Like, people that are known for just endurance were struggling.
Yeah, especially it was mainly towards the end of the second and that third. It seemed like the third round, almost every fight, guys were coming out flat, and in this case, the gals were coming out flat. Because Torres had pretty good first 2 rounds and then 0 for 6. It's like a huge drop off there.
Yeah.
So she gets the win. I'd like for her. I know Joanne Calderwood has a fight booked. She's taking on Beck Hyatt. Randa Marcos is out there. I think that'd be an interesting rematch. Of course, Randa kind of pulled that big upset on the show. You have that fight out there. Claudia Gadelha has that matchup booked now against Jessica Aguilar. And also, speaking of tough, I wouldn't even mind an Esparza Torres rematch as well. So there's a couple of good matchups out there for Tisha, and I think any of those, a win over those ladies, I think gets her a shot at the title.
Yeah, I would like to see Esparza for sure. I think that would cement her to get back up for a title shot, and that'd be a great rematch.
Now, people, just in case you're wondering, yes, I did leave out Paige Van Zant and Rose Namajunas as possible opponents because I think I want to see Paige against Rose. That's why I left those two out. Now, of course, yeah. No, Tisha already beat Paige, so that's kind of why another reason why I'm not throwing that out there.
Yeah, I think if Paige got a rematch now, it'd be different. But her and Rose, I really want to see that matchup, and I think winner of that gets the next shot for sure.
Yeah, and also just because Rose had that fight canceled, and Paige has been sitting here for a couple months, I've figured, boom, they can book that instantly for a card. But we'll see what happens here for the division. So let's get on to the next fight of the evening, and I believe that was at featherweight, as Charles Rosa took on Yair Rodriguez. And boy, what a fight this was, as I believe it ended up winning fight of the night. Yes, it did. Split decision win for Yair Rodriguez. And to me, the really close round, I thought, Billy, was the first round. I think the first round was really close. Rosa did outstrike Rodriguez 19-13, was 2 of 3 on takedowns, but Rodriguez had Rosa in a triangle choke for about a minute and a half. And I think you can kind of make a case that might have swayed the judges there. In round number 2, I thought it was all Rodriguez as he outstruck Rosa 39-15. Rosa was 1 of 9 on his takedowns, and even Rodriguez added a takedown of his own there. And I thought that was clearly Yair Rodriguez. The third round, very close. Rodriguez did outstrike Rosa 45-33, but I thought with the 2 takedowns that Rosa landed with the control, I would have gave him the third round and probably the first round. So I had Rosa winning, but like I said, that first round was really close. I really think he could win either way, but the judges saw it twice, 29-28 for Yair Rodriguez. Who overall, despite even though I had him losing, I thought still had a very good performance. I mean, he did outstrike Rosa 97-67, and he was taken down 5 times, but of 14 attempts, so he stopped 9 takedowns in the fight. And both guys were tired there in the third round, but a great performance. And I think we kind of saw 2 guys that are definitely on the cusp of being the future here for the featherweight division.
Yeah, anything I'm about to say, credit to Charles Rosa. He kept it a fight. It was a split decision. It was close. But Yair Rodriguez impressed me so much because the elevation got to a lot of people, but the techniques he were throwing with some of them kicks was just – it was amazing. He had the energy to throw all that, and he looked really impressive. And I think I don't want them to push him too fast, but I think he can get a big fight quick. He's, I think, 22 years old, which is even more amazing to me.
Yeah, both are young guys. I believe you are correct. Rodriguez was on the first season of Tough Latin America, and this was kind of his first real big showcase fight. He had fought just one time previously in the UFC, and I believe that's when he won Tough Latin America, as he beat Leonardo Morales, beating him by unanimous decision, and had this kind of, and he kind of was hadn't fought since November of last year, so a little bit of a long layoff for him. Comes back. Gets the victory. Yeah, he was born in 1992, June 10th. So actually, he just had a birthday. So I believe he's now 23.
All right.
So he would have just had his birthday a couple days prior to the fight there. So yeah, still a very young guy. And yeah, like you said, really exciting. And I think with the performance there, he probably gets a guy, I would say somewhere between 10 and 15 in the division. It's probably going to be a main card fight somewhere here come fall.
Yeah, I would like to see him 100% fight the loser of the co-main coming up on this weekend's card. Seaver and I can't pronounce the name right. I don't want to butcher it.
It's Kawajiri.
Kawajiri. I think the loser of that fight would be perfect. That's right at the end of the top 15, and it'll get his foot in the door.
The next fight of the evening was in the middleweight division, as another former Ultimate Fighter winner, Kelvin Gastelum, took on former number 1 contender Nate Marquardt. And we saw 2 things here in this fight, Dave. I think we saw the evolution of the striking game of Kelvin Gastelum, and I think we saw the end of Nate Marquardt fighting MMA, at least in the UFC anyways. As how do you like these numbers? He outstruck Nate Marquardt 126-24 in 10 minutes of fighting. That's ridiculous. Not only that, not only just the landed numbers, we saw the output from Gastelum, 188 thrown strikes. And I think I said in the breakdown, unlike what he did to Woodley, he needs output. It's one thing to control the fight, back the guy up against the cage, but if you're not throwing, if you're not threatening with damage, guys are going to still tag you. And that's what happened in the Tyron Woodley fight. This time around, he used that footwork. He was backing up Marquardt, getting up against the cage, but he was throwing punches. I mean, 188 punches in 10 minutes, that's a good clip. You know, that's almost 100 punches around. If you're doing that type of output, that gets guys worried. You know, that puts them on edge. That gets them, you know, maybe doing things desperate and open up, trying to throw haymakers and stuff and leave openings, especially when you have him back up against the cage. And that's what he was able to do in this fight. And he followed his game plan to his T, and Marquardt couldn't continue after the second round. Not only that, his corner kind of stopped it as well there with Trevor Whitman, but this was a very excellent performance, and if he can get his weight under control and do this at 170, he can be a serious threat in the division, Billy.
Yeah, I would like to see him go back to 170. I don't know if they're going to. I don't know. With this fight, it was hard for me because I didn't know if I wanted to say, man, Gastelum looked good. To put that much output, especially at that elevation, it's sort of amazing. And then I didn't know also if it was more just Nate Marquardt was that done. Like, you hear him say in the corner, I have nothing left. It was pretty sad because knowing how he used to be, I don't really know where to judge this fight. If Nate Marquardt was that out of it, either way, I'm not going to take away from Gastelum's output. It was impressive to throw that much at that elevation. But if he goes back to 170, I have no doubt he's a top 5 fighter.
So, like I said, even though this was at 185, I liked what I saw from Gastelum. Now we just got to try to get the weight under control for him because I really liked his performance. And really, like I said, with the exception of the Woodley fight, he has been pretty impressive in every fight. And not only that, it hasn't really been a boring fight. To me, the Woodley fight was the only one that was really boring, but that's because he wasn't doing the output.
Yeah, because before that, he finished Jake Ellenberger, I believe, right before, and that was a good fight.
Yep, he finished everybody, I think, except Uriah Hall. But that was a good fight.
No, he kept that pace up the whole time.
All right, let's get to the co-main event of the evening. Eddie Alvarez against Gilbert Melendez. Not as exciting, I think, as a lot of people thought here, Billy, between these two gentlemen. And you can make a case of elevation. You can make it a case of maybe each guy giving too much respect. You can make a case of Eddie Alvarez by the end of this fight having both eyes almost completely shut. One actually due to a punch, the other due to him blowing his nose and causing swelling, which I had never seen before. Joe Rogan mentioned that it was quite common, but at least in MMA and UFC, which I've been watching religiously since 2008, I have never seen anything like that happen.
It was amazing how fast that thing blew up. I've never seen something that instantaneously just boom.
Yeah, and the fact that maybe it's something that happened, but the camera didn't catch it. But in this case, clearly it was caught by the camera, and you see it instantly. And obviously, after the fight, Joe Rogan asked him, if he would take that back. And he's like, "Oh, absolutely." He goes, I didn't know it did that. So the fact that someone like Eddie Alvarez didn't know that would happen, makes me feel a little better that I didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah. That really shocked me. I didn't know that was even. I've never seen swelling appear so quickly. That's why this fight was kind of tough for me. Again, I think Melendez got tired. Alvarez had his eyes out. It was just a bad case that happened to make this fight kind of boring.
Now, Eddie Alvarez gets the decision, and a split decision. And kind of looking at this, Billy, I kind of was leaning towards Alvarez, watching the fight in person, but now kind of looking over at the stats, I'm not sure how Alvarez pulled this off. He got outstruck 93-43, was only successful on 3 of 11 takedowns, with 2 of those coming in the final round. It's pretty surprising to see a guy get outstruck by 50 and still win. You don't see that happen too often, especially in a 3-round fight, where only 3 takedowns were landed. And Melendez definitely, to me, won the first round. Outstruck him 15-8. The second round, I was kind of close. I didn't think anything real significant happened. But, Alvarez did have that takedown. I think that maybe swayed my mind and some of the judges. And then in the third round, it didn't really seem like Melendez outstruck Alvarez 52-17. Maybe I'm wrong on that. He obviously did. That's the numbers. Alvarez did land 2 takedowns. And again, I thought maybe the takedown and the pressure of the takedowns as he attempted 8 maybe swayed my mind and the judges, and that's how he got the split decision. Either way, though, this wasn't that great of a fight. It wasn't a great performance by either gentleman. But this is a fight I think I would almost like to see run back, maybe in not elevation and not with Eddie Alvarez IPO'd, because I feel like both guys did not live up to their potential in Mexico City.
Yeah, this fight had so much potential, and I'm just gonna blame elevation. I think Gilbert did the most damage, which is why I sort of felt he won overall. But after that first round, I don't remember anything significant happening at all. So I could see why Alvarez would squeak a decision those last 2 rounds and get a decision. Neither guy really did nothing. I'm not mad either way in this fight.
That's the thing. Even when you look at the stats, it kind of paints a picture of Melendez winning. But at the end of the day, neither guy did anything that significant to really stand out in this fight. Neither guy can be that happy with their performance. And I think both guys know that even though Alvarez walks away the winner, I don't think it really moves them up that much more in the division. Alvarez is not getting a title shot after beating Gilbert Melendez.
Yeah, the most significant things of this fight were the shots Melendez landed early in the first. He landed, I think they were both elbows looking back. But after that, yeah, nothing much happened. I think both these guys almost stay right where they're at. Kind of just forget about this fight and move on without elevation.
The main event of the evening was for the unification of the UFC heavyweight titles, as Cain Velasquez, the current heavyweight champion, took on interim champion Fabricio Verdum. And looking at this fight, Billy, the first round went kind of how Cain Velasquez fight. He was putting the pressure on. He was putting the output. He landed 2 takedowns. He outstruck Verdum 58-22 and, hit him with some hard shots. And early on, you thought, all right, Cain Velasquez is back. Forget the almost 2-year layoff. Forget the elevation. This is the Cain Velasquez we remember. And then kind of in the second round, you saw Verdum kind of starting to turn it up a little bit. I think towards the end of that second round was really landing a lot of combinations, ended up outstriking Cain 66-44, not to mention stopping the one lone takedown attempt there by the champion Velasquez. And then in round number 3, I think because of that late flurry there in round number 2, maybe add in the elevation a little bit, I think Velasquez was maybe not feeling himself. The striking numbers in that round were the same. I think he did come out strong with the striking, but after getting tagged a couple more times, went into kind of instinct mode, shot in for a takedown, and Fabricio Verdum instantly, also maybe instinctively as well, locked up a guillotine choke and got Velasquez to tap in the third round at the 2:13 marker, in the process becoming the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion. And I think Verdum in this fight won. I think he prepared correctly, staying in Mexico City, longer than 2 weeks and longer than most fighters on this card stayed. 2, he knew how to, not only the preparation, but I think he had that mental preparation, knowing what to do in Mexico City, how to fight with the elevation, added on top of his preparation. And 3, he showed up with output in this fight. He did not do that against Mark Hunt. Did he get the victory against Mark Hunt? Yes, but he kind of got lucky in this one. In this fight against Velasquez, he did not get lucky. He was the better man on Saturday night. And he kind of slowed into the approach, and we saw the output come on. That's why I've been talking a lot about these guys. If you can put output, you can put pressure on guys, you can put punches in their face, that does something to fighters. And that's what happened here in this fight. Not only did maybe Cain Velasquez a little tired, a little rusty, hard to breathe, you add in just getting, punched in the face a lot, or the threat of that, trying to move around that changes your game plan. Not only that, was he getting punched, he got cut, he was bleeding. I think that also affected Cain Velasquez, and that's because of the striking pressure by Fabricio Verdum. So it doesn't surprise me that he went in there and got the finish. He took Cain completely out of his game plan, which is normally to be on top of guys and be brutal. And Cain wasn't doing that. He was trying to be brutal and stand up. And when it becomes a stand up fight, it was kind of an even thing. It was kind of like, all right, this plays into Fabricio Verdum. Shot in maybe kind of for an ill-advised takedown there. Verdum takes advantage and gets another submission victory, becomes the heavyweight champion.
Yeah, this one, I mean, I know no one wants nothing to do with Fabricio's ground game, but he's looked so good on the feet recently. And I really like what he did, because when he turned it up and he had Cain hurt, he didn't force nothing. He just waited. He knew he was going to shoot that takedown. He knew he was going to go to instinct, and he waited and timed that choke perfectly. And really, he did everything right. I think he was the only person on this card that was fully prepared to fight in Mexico City, and it showed. It showed a lot.
Yeah, and I think next to Rodriguez, I think him and there was maybe one other fighter on the card that had fought the first time there for UFC 180, and obviously those guys ended up doing very well. And like I said, I think Verdum learned a lot from fighting in Mexico City, and I think that really helped them for this fight. Because I bet if I go back to the stats, and just look at the 1 or 2 rounds here that Fabricio fought in Mexico City the last time, you'll see a drastic change in output. Yeah, in the fight overall, Fabricio Verdum threw 48 strikes through about 8 minutes worth of action. Okay, obviously not a huge output, but it got the win. Just through one round, Billy, the first round, he already threw 56 strikes. He already threw more strikes in the first round against Velasquez than he did in the whole fight against Mark Hunt. To me, that shows he got what he needed to improve on.
Yeah, that's the most you can take from that. He realized the first time and he fixed his mistake, and it showed. And Cain's the one that I'm kind of worried about from here, because I don't want to see like one of those Shane Carwin things where they're really hurt and beat up and they sort of can't make a comeback, because people are saying Fabricio is the best heavyweight of all time with this win, but that run Cain had was really impressive. So I don't know.
It's hard to say he's the greatest of all time because he has never defended the title.
Yeah.
You got to defend the title first. And let's not forget, people have been talking about, Alistair Overeem, maybe talking about him being washed up. Well, his last loss, guess who that was to? Alistair Overeem. In 2011. So Ben Rothwell beat Alistair Overeem. So I think that's a loss, that can be avenged. Obviously, he lost to Junior Dos Santos, who's still very relevant at the division, and also another guy in a hot streak. Another loss he has, Andrei Arlovski.
That's the fight, man. That's what gets me excited, tingly inside. I need to see that fight.
So the only other loss he has outside to a guy who's not in the UFC is Sergey Kharitonov. That was back in 2005 in Pride. I believe Kharitonov has fought for the UFC since. I don't think he's in there anymore. But those are his 4 losses. He's had some big wins as well, but the greatest heavyweight of all time, I still think Fedor winning like 30 fights in a row, even though he eventually lost to Verdum, is still the most impressive streak in the heavyweight division.
Yeah, the reason people say it is because Verdum was like the first to beat him, but I think Verdum has a lot more to prove. I wasn't saying I agree, but that's what a lot of people are talking about.
I don't know who his next title defense will be. I think the Arlovski matchup is very intriguing, just because it's a rematch, and Arlovski pretty much dominated Verdum in that fight from what I remember. Verdum didn't really do much offense in there, so I think that's a good rematch. And obviously, you had Arlovski being on a winning streak, kind of an old school thing, underdog comeback story. I think that's a really good fight to build up. I think that's a really easy sell for the UFC as a pay-per-view. Another guy hanging around is Stipe Miocic. The guy just dominated Mark Hunt. Obviously, you look at Verdum's fight against Mark Hunt, wasn't a great performance. That's one you can kind of build also. Stipe's not young. I mean, he's 32, but young in terms of his, fight experience and young within the UFC. And I think people really liked his fight against Dos Santos, even though that was a loss. I think that's one you can easily build up as well.
In a perfect world for me, you give Arlovski the title shot versus Verdum. Alistair Overeem and Dos Santos gets matched up. If Kane makes a quick turnaround, he fights Stipe, and the winner of that gets a shot.
Yeah,
well, that's a tough one too, because Dos Santos Overeem might make a case too.
right, and if Kane's not ready to go, I think Ben Rothwell's Stipe, just because of the role Rothwell's been on, I think could be booked very easily.
Yeah, and if not, I'd like to see Rothwell fight Mark Hunt
again.
I mean, I just that weight class is so booked up now. It gets tough in the top 5 area.
Also, I guess an under the radar, if Stefan Struve can actually have a solid performance against Big Nog, if he can look, coming out all right, Stefan Struve's a guy that kind of puts himself back into the picture. And also, let's not forget Todd Duffy and Frank Mir. Frank Mir's not real relevant, but if Todd Duffy can beat Frank Mir, that's a young, big, and powerful, strong guy that I think that, still has a future. I think he got his problems under control, and I think he's also a scary guy to look out for. Again, if he can get by Mir, I want to stress that.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too soon on that fight. I don't know. Mir's a tough one for me.
All right, let's get to this weekend's action. UFC Fight Pass. It will be in Berlin, Germany. The Fight Pass card will start at 3 p.m. Eastern for the main card, noon for the undercard. The undercard will feature 7 fights, and the main card will have 4. We'll start there with the first fight here. It will be in the lightweight division as Nick Hein will take on Lucas Sajewski. Looking at Hein, 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to James Vick at the Fight Night Austin card last year, and 6 of his 11 career victories are by decision. Looking at Sajewski, he's making his UFC debut, 13-0 overall, a Polish fighter, and 7 of his 13 career victories are by submission. Now, if I remember correctly, Nick Hein had a pretty good performance against James Vick. Nick Hein's listed at 68 inches, which I believe is 5'8", because I think 72 is 6 foot. So 5'8". I believe James Vick's like 6'3", if I'm not mistaken. And he had a pretty good performance against a really big guy in James Vick. And that was a split decision loss, I believe. So that was a really good fight. And I think kind of that experience, and also he's originally from Germany. Let's add that fact in too. I think he's going to be all raring and ready to go. And I think Sajewski, I think he has to kind of go with his advantage here. I think if he can get it to the ground and make it a grappling match, I would say that's his best chance to win. But after seeing Hein kind of go toe-to-toe with James Vick, I would say Sajewski doesn't want any striking with Nick Hein.
Yeah, Sajewski's best chance here, you just got to go out there and get that takedown, because it's hard because you don't have much to compare it to, like you said, but Vick is for sure tough, and he's a tough guy to deal with. So if he did well, you stay in that fight. Sajewski's got to get him on his back.
And like I said, it'll be interesting, with the hometown, not hometown, but, home country crowd behind him and stuff. I think that always, I think they'll give a big boost because, they don't do too many of these European cards. And so for Nick Hein to get a chance to fight in Germany, I find it hard to believe. He may lose, but I find it hard to believe he's not going to have a good performance. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I just want to say, off topic again, but on the Fight Pass prelim headliner, Makwan Amirkhani, if I'm not saying that wrong, he looks super impressive his last fight, and I'd recommend not missing that fight.
Just to let people know, this is very interesting. He's originally from the country of Kurdistan, which I believe is somewhere in the former Soviet Union with Kazakhstan around there and stuff. But his nickname is Mr. Finland, according to the UFC website. So apparently he now lives and trains in Finland. So just want to let people know they were confused about that, unless the UFC's wrong on that. But yeah, so that guy's name, so he's Mr. Finland, Amir Makwani. That's the most Finnish name I know. So there we go. All right, let's continue on here with the main card. 170, Peter Sabata against Stephen Kennedy. Again, another guy making their UFC debut in Stephen Kennedy, originally from England, 22-6 overall in his career, with 9 of his 22 career victories coming by submission. Peter Sabata, 1-0 in the UFC. He fought In the last UFC fight night in Berlin, which was last April, he defeated Pavel Pawlik, and 9 of his 14 career victories are by submission. I don't know a lot about Stephen Kennedy. Looking at the submission numbers, maybe more willing to go to grappling. And I know Sabata is kind of a grappling expert there. Also a guy who has the majority of his wins by submission. So it'd be interesting if these both guys try to grapple each other or if they're going to maybe try the stand-up. This fight's a little more wide open. I'd give a slight edge to Sabata. That maybe giving my pick away a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised at this one we see a lot of ground action, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards looking at this fight.
Whenever I look into a fight and it looks like two grapplers, they almost always respect each other, cancel out, and it ends up just turning into some sort of slugfest, or they both stand. And I think that's what this turns into. I think they respect each other enough. Stay away from the grappling. It turns into a stand-up war.
The co-main event of the evening will be in the featherweight division as Dennis Siver will take on Takeru Kawajiri. Looking at Kawajiri, 1-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to Clay Guida back at the fight night in Abu Dhabi last year. 12 of his 33 career victories are by knockout. Looking at Dennis Siver, 11-7 with a no contest in the UFC. His last fight was the loss to Conor McGregor at Fight Night Boston, and 9 of his 22 career victories are by submission. Now, what I've seen so far from Kawajiri in the UFC, he really likes to push up his opponents up against the cage and go for the takedowns. Now, in the Clay Guida fight, not a very exciting fight. He kind of tried that strategy, kind of reversed against him because that's kind of what Clay Guida does. We also saw Kawajiri kind of fade a little bit in that fight as well. So that's something to look out for. And for Dennis Siver, obviously not a guy that really pushes for the takedown. He does have some decent grappling. As I mentioned, majority of his wins come by submission, but obviously a pretty exciting striker. And I think if Siver can keep this thing at range, that's where he's going to have his best success. I also think he'll have good success if this thing can get into the third round. For Kawajiri, you want to close the distance, be up close, and not allow Siver to kind of throw those spinning attacks towards you. And if he can do that, he can win this fight. So very interesting. Also, another guy, Dennis Siver, even though he was originally born in Russia, has spent the majority of his life living and training in Germany. So this is kind of a big hometown fight for him. So another guy, interesting to see how he fights fighting in Germany.
Yeah, I don't know how much Kawajiri is going to be able to take him down against the fence, but I think for Siver, this fight, that's his only priority. Stay off the fence, stay in striking range, and he can get that decision. If Kawajiri can hold him there, I don't know if he'll finish Siver, but I think he can also edge out a decision, get him on his back a little bit, keep him against that fence. Don't stay in striking range.
The main event of the evening for the women's strawweight title for the first time ever on the UFC Fight Pass, Jessica Penne will take on Joanna Jedrzejczyk. Looking at Jessica Penne, 1-0 in the UFC after her run on The Ultimate Fighter Season 20. She fought in the finale against Randa Marcos, defeating her in a split decision, and 7 of her 12 career victories are by submission for the former Invicta Atomweight champion. Looking at Jedrzejczyk, now 3-0 in the UFC. She became the strawweight champion back at UFC 185, knocking out Carla Esparza, and 5 of her 9 career victories are by decision. Now, in this matchup, I think a lot of people maybe are surprised that Penne got it. I'm not that surprised. She finished kind of, if you want to look at it, Billy, 3rd place on the Ultimate Fighter, as her and Randa were kind of the 2 losers in the semifinal rounds. Penne won that fight. I thought that Penne actually, with that win, was going to get the first shot at Esparza. However, it went to Jedrzejczyk. Jedrzejczyk had a dominant performance over Carla Esparza at 185, got the title. Penne gets it now, kind of moving on short notice by a few weeks. She had another fight booked. She gets the main event here in Berlin once Gustafsson and Glover moved off this card. And Jessica Penne, even though I think a lot of people underestimate her, some media outlets don't even have Jessica Penne in the top 10 of this division because technically, not including her Ultimate Fighter time, she's only had 1 fight at 115 because she was the 105 champ. But even though she fought a lot at 105, she's only 1 inch shorter than Jedrzejczyk. So she's a decent-sized strawweight. So it's not like she's going to get overmatched, I don't think at all. And I think her time on the show proved that even moving up 10 pounds, she didn't look that much different, to be quite honest. And anything, you could say she's better moving up the 10 pounds. That's less weight for her to cut, less, a little more conditioning and energy going into fight night. So I think she'll be able to be a formidable opponent for Jedrzejczyk. And I think the difference between her and Esparza, she's not the greatest at takedowns, but I think she's a little better in scrambles than Carla, and also has way better finishing skills. As I mentioned, 12 victories, 7 submissions. That's even a better finish rate than Jedrzejczyk in terms of overall finishes for her. So I think Penne will be a tough test for Joanna. It's just whether or not Penne can get in those scrambles and somehow get the fight to the ground. Even if she's on bottom, I still think she can be dangerous. I wouldn't even be surprised if she tries to pull guard. I know it's an old school technique, but I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see that going on, especially if she's getting dominated in the feet. On the feet, obviously, she's really quick, this being Joanna, with her hands, great combinations, great footwork, not devastating power, but knows how to move in and out of the pocket and throw punches and bunches. And so obviously Penne, we're going to have to see a lot of circling from her to try to counter that. A lot of circling, and I think a lot of leg kicks, trying to throw off Joanna off those fast hand punches. And like I said, look for scrambles and take advantage of those. If she can do that, she might be able to pull out a win here, Billy. But if she can't handle the hand speed and can't match up with the footwork to counter with circling, this is going to be another win for Joanna.
Yeah, for the thing for Joanna is I don't know if there's anyone. Well, maybe Rose. I don't know. I don't know if I'd put anyone that wants to stand and strike with her. She's too fast. Her accuracy is good. But the thing I didn't like when Carla fought her is Carla did not set up her takedowns at all. Her takedown defense looked amazing, but Carla was just shooting from across the ring. I think Penne needs to just, I'm not saying strike with her, throw a few hands, set up your takedowns. As long as you do that, I think you can put her on her back, and that's where your best chance of victory is. But you have to set up your takedowns.
Now, do you think this fight will be, I think, if anything in this fight, I think Penne will prove that she was a solid choice for a number 1 contender. I don't know if she'll win, but I think she'll prove a lot of people wrong saying, oh, she shouldn't have got this opportunity.
No, she for sure deserves it. The fight she had against the former champion was a good fight. I think she could have won that fight. It was close enough. If I remember, it was on the show, though. And then ever since she's looked good, I don't think there's anything. That division, like I said, there's like a good top 5 that deserve it. So it's hard to argue it from any of them.
Well, with that said, let's get to picks for UFC Fight Night Berlin on the Fight Pass this Saturday. First fight of the evening, lightweight Nick Hein as he takes on Lucas Sajewski. Again, Sajewski making his debut. I'm going to go with Hein in his home country for the win.
Yeah, I think Hein has it. He has the experience edge.
Peter Sabata against Stephen Kennedy in the welterweight division. Once again, I'll go with the guy not making his debut. Give me Peter Sabata in this one.
I'm going to go with Kennedy on this one. I think come out there and find a way.
Dennis Seaver against Tatsu Kawajiri. Co-main event of the evening. I'm going to maybe go with the upset here. I'm going to go with Kawajiri. I think he will be able to pressure Seaver enough to get the victory.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I don't know if Seaver's going to look the same. He took a pretty bad beating in his last fight. I think Kawajiri's going to take him out.
The next fight of the evening, the main event for the UFC Women's Strawweight Championship, Jessica Penne against Joanna Jedrzejczyk. I think, as people know, pretty big fan of Jedrzejczyk from Poland. I'm of Polish descent myself, fighting close enough to home in Berlin, Germany, not that far from, obviously, a much shorter trip than Penne coming from Southern California. So I'm definitely sure she'll have the support of the German fans there in Berlin, and I'm sure a lot of fans from Poland will make the trip to Berlin. And like I said, I think Penne, like I said, I laid out the game plan. I think if she can accomplish that, she can get a win. But, I think Jedrzejczyk will just be slightly too much for her and will be the first person to successfully defend the strawweight title in UFC history.
Yeah, 100%. Joanna, I think she's too good. I don't know if you're going to take her down. I don't think you're going to beat her on the feet. Joanna wins it all around.
All right. Any final thoughts before we end this week's show, Big Shot Bill?
Nothing from me. Just hopefully this is a great. I like to see that they're putting a title fight on Fight Pass, and hopefully it turns out good.
I'm excited for this, probably more so than any other Fight Pass card. I'm really interested to see how the title fight works, whether that really helps boost sales or not. And I think this is a really big moment for the UFC and the streaming network. I really do. I think they've had some big fights on here before, but I don't know. Maybe next to the Crow Cop fight, which I think was the last Fight Pass one, coincidentally. I don't know if there's been this much buzz around a Fight Pass one. I think a lot of people were excited about Crow Cop's return, more so than, even I think Gustafsson was on there, a couple times and whatnot. But yeah, this title fight is huge.
The only other one I compare it to, I think, was McGregor's first fight against Brandao, a Fight Pass fight.
Oh, that's true. I think that one was as well. That one was definitely up there. Yeah.
But that's the only other one I can think of, and this is a title shot, so I think this will be it.
Yeah, big deal. So very excited for this weekend. He is Mr. Billy Brandt. You can follow him on Twitter at WBrandt21. I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And, send shout outs to our friends at MMAinsider.net, MMAforlife.ca, toprated MMA.com, and of course, the great and powerful Oz, known as AJ Hiller of MMA Signatures USA.com. I think he announced on his Facebook page, I'm not 100% sure, but he is, if you're looking to get into memorabilia or meet some fighters, get some autographs, buy some MMA related gear, stuff like that. You weren't able to go, you're not able to go to the big, International Fight Week coming up here in July. Well, AJ Hiller, he realizes this, that you might not be able to go to that. And he's making his own event, the MMA Classic, where he has promised me he's going to have around 30 current or former UFC stars in attendance in Syracuse, New York on October 3rd with booths and vendors and autographs and all that good stuff. And I think more information will come out on the MMA Signatures page as we get here through the summer. But that is an event you probably don't want to miss. So if you're looking to meet some UFC fighters and meet some like-minded UFC fans, maybe perhaps myself and Billy, I got to get through Nashville first and I can worry about Syracuse, but definitely an event we're looking to attend in person. I'd look at that MMA Classic event held by MMA Signatures. So check out, like I said, more information, I believe, on this Facebook page, the MMA Signatures Facebook page. So, all right, for Billy Brandt, I am Jim Graham, and thank you for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast.